One of the biggest mistakes I see with firms that are trying to get into advisory services is that they sometimes think that only big businesses need advanced financial planning. And that could not be further from the truth. Basically, every single business needs to have some type of financial plan. Now, it might not be cost effective for all businesses to be able to have the advanced level of planning that you might be able to provide as an advisory service. So, that is up to you to decide when that makes sense for you. But here at Clara CFO, we have done financial models for businesses that are even in the mid six-figure range and up from there. So at Clara CFO, we work with mostly small businesses between 1 and 20 million in annual revenue. And yet we have worked and created really great models for businesses even smaller than that. So if there is any kind of complexity and if a business wants to grow, chances are they could benefit from some advanced planning. So what we're going to do in today's video is I'm going to talk to you guys about some real client situations that we have handled and talk about the custom tables that we've built and talk about the result that we could get for the client through doing this process. So I hope this video will be really helpful to you as you start to think about what clients I have right now and what clients I could be pitching additional services to and where I could be providing additional value. All right, let's go ahead and I'm going to show you guys these clients. I'm going to bring up my slides and we're going to talk about the client. I'm going to explain the client a little bit, talk about the drivers, and then talk about the results. And I will tell you that we can't show you the numbers that we have built directly in for our clients, but I am going to pull up an example of one of the demo accounts of Jirav so that you guys can see an example of how this could be built out. So the first example I have for you today is a business-to-business professional services company. So this is a professional service that is provided to other businesses. And this business in particular is run on a retainer model, and they like to track monthly recurring revenue because whenever they bring in a client that increases their monthly recurring revenue, and they typically hold that client for a number of years before that person, decides to go a different direction or doesn't need them anymore or whatever it might be. So they have a recurring revenue model. They have 3 different service levels, and they also have 3 different stages to their sales process. So with that, we have helped them build a custom table to help predict revenue and customer growth. So what I have here is I've showed you just kind of a snippet of the custom tables that have been built in order to help project the income. So customer growth table has existing customers plus the change, whether it's plus or minus in the customer growth and the ending customer calculation. It also has discovery calls taken because that's part of the sales process. And we use that to help predict further growth. And also along with conversion rates. So this table is actually a little more complex than this, but I wanted to simplify it for the purposes of this presentation here. But we actually have at every stage of the sales process, so discovery call, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, there's a conversion rate there. So from discovery call, if it's a 50% conversion rate to the next thing and to the next thing. So what that allows us to do is actually talk with the client and help set targets for how many discovery calls are needed. If we want to reach the end result of a certain revenue number, we can backtrack it all the way to really what does our discovery call rate need to be? Okay. And what does our conversion rate need to be? So that can be really helpful. And then the monthly income can be built off of that customer growth. So for example, starting with previous monthly recurring revenue, that's what MRR stands for. Adding what the new added MRR is could be a function of the customer change. Then we can calculate total MRR and then total income at each phase. So this can be based on our average rate per phase. So if, phase 1 is an average of $2,000 per unit, then we can do unit of, whatever that phase is times this rate. So this helps build out the monthly income. Now, I want to show you guys an example here. We're going to hop into Jirav. Okay, so here we are in the Simba demo, and this is a business that has subscription revenue. It also has professional services revenue, but that's actually closer to a different example that I have that I'm going to talk about. So we're going to skip over that. When we were planning with this client to help them build monthly recurring revenue. It was acting like a subscription business. So this is a little bit more like what that customer growth table could look like, with beginning customers, new customers, customers churned, and ending customers. So they give you a calculation to be able to build this in to get a final result. And then they were also able to calculate average MMR per customer. They built an assumption here, and then average expansion MRR. So this is really similar to the calculations of MRR that we were trying to do. And then this is that roll forward of beginning MRR, added MRR, and then lost, and then ending calculation here as well. And then this is the customer churn rate and retention rate that they might want to be keeping track of. And you can see that like you can make projections in the future. So this is really helpful going back up to the customers. If or your client has goals, you can help put the new customer growth rate in here and make sure that it's reasonable based on based on their marketing efforts. This looks like a fairly conservative growth rate compared to what they've been doing in the past. They've been growing at a faster rate. So, this is where you get to have those conversations with clients. But this is super helpful when helping to project revenue. Okay. So that's just a really good example of a customer growth table and calculating MRR. Okay, so what results were we able to achieve for this client? Because, it's great to have a great financial model, but ultimately you want to show something to the clients that they feel like they've really gotten something from all of this effort. So what the client was able to do is that they now can see like what they can adjust their growth rate, they can adjust their conversion rate, they can look at their average rate per hour in order to identify what actions need to take place in order to hit their targets. So if they can, improve their conversion rate by 20%, or if they can grow clients at a faster rate rather than the rate that has been projected, if they have some method to do that, or if they can increase their rate per hour. All of these things are a potential result of being able to build a model like this. And the second thing is that then they can also do some scenario planning off of this as well. They can copy the scenario and say like, well, here's best case growth scenario, here's worst case growth scenario, and here's what our revenue would be, and here's what our profit would be if it was this versus that. So this is where it can get like really great for scenario planning and also helping provide a lot of comfort for clients. Like this happened recently where we kind of proved out to a client, hey, if you don't grow at all through the rest of the year, we're actually going to be fine because we don't have to spend as much as we had planned in these other areas. And you can actually kind of coast through the end of the year if you want to, like in worst case scenario. So it was a really nice moment for the client to kind of have peace of mind, sleep better at night so that they were able to see it really clearly. Like, I don't need to stress out over like this next client coming in because I know that I'm okay if I just stay status quo for now. So ultimately, this client was able to just get a lot more peace of mind and also have really clear metrics to be able to deliver to the sales team as well. Because if we know we need to hit this conversion rate and we need to have this many discovery calls, then we can kind of, that allows us to, work into the sales projection and the revenue projection. And then the sales teams knows exactly what they need to do, which is fantastic. Okay, so example 2 is also a service company. My business works with mostly service companies, so sorry, that is just what I have to share with you guys today. But whether you're working with a service business or a product business, you're going to be able to identify the drivers in order to think about, okay, what do I need to build that will be custom to the scenario of this client so that I can help give them a better model ultimately. So this business is a home services company. They're kind of interesting because they hire employees and pay employees based on the hours worked, and they sell packages of hours to clients. So they might sell a package of hours that's 20 hours a week, but they are paying that employee to service that client for 20 hours a week. But then they also have to pay for admin time and they have to pay for some, vacation and things like that. So it's not just one for one. There's actually more hours associated to what they're paying versus what, the employee or the client is actually paying for. So what we needed to do is we needed to build a model that as the revenue, the client hours continued to grow, that we were appropriately raising payroll costs along with it. because that was a really hard thing for them to predict in the past, and was a major, one of their major things when they came to work with us is they were worried about cash flow, and then they were worried about this kind of constant growth in their payroll, and just kind of worried about how to, when can they make investments and when can they not. So the custom tables that we built for them were around customer growth. And this is with beginning client hours, lost client hours, new client hours, total billable hours, and then we added on admin hours, and then total hours payable to the employee. So the billable hours was to the client, and then the payable hours was to the employee. And then the average revenue per hour, so we could get that revenue projection. We also built another table that I didn't put in here that's more on the payable side, so that we can figure out, the average rate payable per hour based on this total hours payable, so that we could then predict the payroll costs. And that payroll cost, then we have drivers built into kind of the P&L that are, employee benefits costs and employee taxes and things like that, that as those grow, as the number of employees and as the total gross wages grows, then those costs go up as well. So again, we have that really accurate model. We also have built in a number of operational metrics for this client, like the number of clients, the average weekly hours, average monthly hours, because those are things that a client really likes to see on a leadership team dashboard. And so we built in some special things, even though they're actually not used to calculate anything else in the financial model. They are used to support the KPIs and the dashboards for the leadership team. So you can also build custom tables just because you want to import that data or have some ability to project that data, and it doesn't have to be tied to everything else either. So there's a lot of flexibility with the custom tables. We like that a lot. So here, let's hop into another example in Jirav. This is more of that like professional services is the example I'm going to show you, but it aligns more closely with this example for this client. So I'm back here in the Semba demo, and you can see here that they are calculating hour metrics. So how many working days per month, how many monthly hours, and then a head count. They are, putting how many total hours are available and a percent utilization billable hours. So this is kind of similar to what we've built for our client. We've thought of it slightly differently, but this is another way you could potentially work this in. They have a billable rate calculated in here, and then a revenue times rate. So when you look here, it has professional services times billable hours, which is this column here or this line here, and then times the hourly rate. So it's basically billable hours times rate equals this. So again, this is kind of that example of you can build in what works for your business. And this is kind of similar to the example I was just talking about. So for this client, the result is that they are able to accurately predict their increased labor costs. Again, that rising revenue has rising labor costs along with it, but hopefully revenue is growing at a faster rate than labor. That's the work that we helped them do. And we're able to factor in that taxes and the benefits. And then they also got tons of clarity into their profit margin to determine if they can invest in additional benefits for their employees, because that's a big value of theirs, is making sure that they're providing good benefits, and if they need any more admin help, because as they have more team members, they start to need more like oversight and more admin hours even for those team members. And they're also able to now track operational metrics and share those with the leadership team, and then also have people have it kind of very clear to hold people accountable to those metrics as well. So very helpful all around. Okay, here's a third example. This is another B2B professional services company, but this company works in long-term contracts, and the contracts are based on hours spent. And they bill at the end of the month for hours that have actually been worked, and it's variable. So there's not like the same amount being recorded every single month. It could be a $200,000 contract, and one invoice could be $15,538, and the next one could be $85,725. So we need some way to be able to predict this type of revenue. And this client in particular also spends a lot of money on subcontractors to help fulfill the work. So when they get a new contract, they have an idea of when they're going to need to bring certain subcontractors in to do a very specific piece of the work. And that matters for cash flow, and that matters for the planning and the timing of bringing in those subcontractors, and it really affects the margin, and they need to make sure that they're billing in order to pay those subcontractors. So we've built a couple custom tables for them, and we really decided to go really detailed on this one. And we decided to take revenue and then actually have a separate line item for every single contract that this business has, because they don't have a ton, but they have very, larger contracts. So we decided to just track revenue by contract and cost of goods sold by contract. So we could plan out, okay, contract 1 starts in August, and we know that in October, we're going to have, $25,000 that needs to go to subcontractor Y. And, we can see that very clearly. And then the next contract 2 is starting in October. And we know that in December, contractor Y is going to get another payment of $25,000. So we were able to help plan out all of that, which is incredibly helpful. And then we've also kind of calculated what is left to bill, because that is a number that the management of the business really needs to know. Have we burned out all of our contracts, or do we still have enough that's left to bill? And that's a metric that they can use to track, so they get a sense of where are they on business development? Do they have enough business? Do they need to hire more employees? So it gives them a really good sense of where they are. So that is a good space to be. So the result for this client is that they're able to better predict their subcontractor expenses and able to plan their cash flow accordingly. They're able to see ahead of time when their contract revenue is going to dip, so they can put in sales efforts way ahead of time and keep revenue high enough to hit their profit targets. And they're also able to do that detailed tracking of contracts, which helps ensures that no revenue slips through the cracks. Sometimes, it can be that you have a contract that didn't get fully billed out, and you actually had money left on the contract, which means money was left on the table. Or maybe, in the list of invoices, one contract didn't get invoiced for a couple months in a row. And that can be also hard to recover from a client sometimes if you're not sending a bill in a timely manner, or it can significantly delay your cash flow. So good result all around for this client, and having that detailed tracking has been really helpful. So the last example I have for you guys is a B2C service company, business to consumer. This one is a company that provides therapy services to individuals, and they have lots of customer churn because people come in for therapy and then they don't need it, and then they come in and then they don't need it. So lots of customer turnover that happens, and they have goals around customer retention, and they have goals around their revenue. And so, helping them try to track what's going on, helping them figure out where are they having leaks in their system from when someone first contacts them to when they actually show up for an appointment. There's actually a lot of leaks that can happen during that time. And so we've been able to help them track those things, help them identify gaps in their operational process so that they can get more of those clients in the door. So we've built a customer growth table similar to what we've showed you already. Monthly appointments. So we like to track how many providers there are, how many total monthly appointments there were, how many could there have been is a number that we've looked at before as well. Monthly appoints by status. So did someone show up? Did someone cancel? Did someone no-show? We can track that. We can track average billable hours per appointment. And then we can track things like percent canceled and percent paid and revenue per appointment. Then with new client intake, some of this is more for the team to kind of understand where they are and what numbers they need to hit. So they track things like inquiries, clients scheduled, how many people actually attended the intake session, and then what the conversion rates were along the way, and also how many clients are on the wait list, because they have a target for that as well. So the result for this business is that they've been able to forecast revenue based on the seasonality of when new clients are more likely to join. It turns out that there are certain seasons where people are more thinking about getting this type of help. And there are some seasons where they just see a dip year over year, that it's always really difficult for people to come in. They're canceling at higher rates and things like that, like the summer, for example, because people go on vacation. So this has been really helpful for them and, helps predict revenue. And then the team is now more aligned than ever to get visibility on the operational metrics. And they have a leadership team dashboard that we've created for them. And it helps everybody be on the same page as actually what's happening in the business. And they're able to actually have more financial success now that the team is on board and can see these numbers and feel like they can actually affect change. And lastly, they have a lot more clarity into the cash flow whenever a client is lost. So that's really helpful as well. All right. Well, I hope these examples have helped you take all of this theoretical learning into practical to say, what is happening with my client and how can I customize their financial model to really help identify what's going on? What are the things that are the activities that are actually happening that are going to affect the financials? And how can I build that in so that I can create those dependencies and put the dollars into the plan and ultimately have a plan that's going to help your client be more successful? So I love Jirav for this because we have not been able to come across any other tool that does it to this level, and this allows this level of detail. That's why we use it at Clara CFO, and I hope that you enjoy using it as well. Hopefully these videos have been helpful for you, and I wish you all the best in your advanced planning.